Welcome to She Achieved podcast.
Thank you.
I am so excited to have you with us today, Becky. I'm really excited to really share your passion and your love for the work that you're currently doing. And a lot of people see you and know you as the face of Talbot House, but I'm not sure that many people really know where the drive comes from in your story of how you came to be.
Right.
But before we jump into that, I would love for you to share with our listeners a little bit about yourself, your
Okay.
background, and then transition into sharing how the Talbot House came to be. So
Okay.
welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Very quickly about me, I was raised in Tupelo. I was not born here, but I was raised here. We moved here when I was in the third grade. My dad is a native Tupeloan, and my granddad was the Tupelo High School football coach for many, many years. So, but I was raised here. Went to elementary school here, middle school here, high school here, graduated here, and just made it my home. This is home. Um, Grew up in a wonderful, beautiful family. Had all the opportunities and privileges, and I know they're privileges that any kid could ask for. And still somehow managed to turn out to be an alcoholic. So, I'm a person in long-term recovery from addiction. And what that means is I haven't had a drink or drug. It's been 15 years now. A lot of people think, you're more likely to be an alcoholic if you come from an unstable background, but that's just not the case. I mean, addiction is no respecter of persons. So any of us could catch it. It's kind of like not knowing if you are allergic to strawberries. How do you know you're allergic to strawberries? Well, I ate one time and I broke out in a rash and and I got hives and my throat closed up. So those people are not going to eat strawberries again. Alcohol does a different kind of number on you. So I did not know that my body was actually having an allergic reaction to alcohol when it made me feel tall and thin and blonde and smart and brave. I had no idea. It doesn't do that to just everyone. So I'm one of the lucky ones that made it into recovery. So,
Becky, I commend you for sharing some of your personal details of your story. And you are so open about it. And I think as an advocate and an ambassador for recovery and addiction and being a spokesperson, and what you do through the Talbot House is nothing short of amazing. And I just think it's fabulous. And there's such a stigma.
there is.
Such a
There is
stigma.
a huge stigma still.
Still, absolutely. With all the resources and information that we have out there. And frankly, every one of us, more than likely, whether we know it or not, know someone who has an addiction. They're just really good at hiding it, or we're just not close enough to them to know. And it is a very difficult subject and a difficult disease to understand.
Right. And what you just said, disease, that's the part that people don't understand, that it is a disease. It's actually in the DSM-5, as a legitimate disease. Addiction is a disease. Now, of course, everyone who ever took a drink made the choice to take that drink to start off with. They did not make that choice to become addicted to it. That's where the disease part comes in. And not everybody can say, "Oh my gosh, wait, this is not working for me and I need to get some help." Not everybody's able to really see that at the beginning, maybe this is not working for me. And some people have to kind of suffer through that addiction for a while until it does click in that maybe they need some help. And unfortunately, a lot of people, it never clicks in.
Well, it's a lot easier to keep doing what you have done and that what makes you feel good instead of acknowledging or realizing. Or, self-awareness goes a long way.
I call
And
it,
sometimes it's just easier. It's
it
easier to
is.
just keep doing it and not have to worry with it because, frankly, you feel embarrassed. You feel less than. You feel like something is wrong with you. And that's a difficult journey.
Well, most people who suffer with addiction have those feelings before they ever take a drink or use a drug. They have those feelings. And then the substances kind of, for a brief moment make you feel a little bit better, but over the long term, reinforce those ideas about, I'm less than. And it's hard work to be an addict. It's extremely hard work. And that's why I love what I do, because I get to see these women who are like, man, I had no idea how tired I was. And that light starts coming on in their eyes, and those little neurons start firing again, and they're like, wait, you know I can just do normal things today. I can wash my clothes, make my bed, and go to work, and then come home and not have to chase whatever it is that I was so dependent on for so long.
You had mentioned earlier, just a few minutes ago, that it made you feel tall
Yes.
and pretty and all
Yes.
these things.
Confident.
Give our listeners a little bit of insight of how your story started with dealing with the addiction.
Oh, well, the addiction, I did not know. I was in high school and tried alcohol, and it made me feel tall and smart and blonde, because blondes have more fun and confident. And, I was in high school, so you don't drink all the time when you're in high school. You drink whenever the opportunity arises. And when it did, I did. And I did that for many, many years. I was not a daily drinker. I was just, if the opportunity presented itself, I would have a drink. But I never drank the way the people around me drank. That was the difference. I could be around people who could have one or two drinks and they'd be like, "Ooh, I'm starting to feel this. I'm going to have to quit or switch to water, or it's time to go home now." Not me. There's such an obsession in the brain. It's almost like there's a little monster in there screaming, feed me, give me more." And so my little monster was like, okay, they're just wimps. We're going to go ahead and finish it off for them. That's, I had no control over that. It was just once I started, I could not, for years, I tried to convince myself I was a social drinker. There was nothing social about my drinking, not at all. And, I managed to put together a life. I managed to function. Like I said, I wasn't a daily drinker for many, many years. I drank alcoholically when I drank, but I wasn't a daily drinker. I had a therapist once who described that as binge drinking. And I suppose that's what I did for a while. And then a series of life challenges. That's the other thing. An alcoholic cannot face life on life's terms, good, bad, or indifferent. Anything happens, they're going to have a drink, whether it's a good thing, a bad thing, or if a good thing happens, we're going to drink to celebrate. If a bad thing happens, we're going to drink so we can drown our sorrows. If I didn't get to the random Tuesday drinking until a little bit later, but life happened, and I did not know how to handle life on life's terms, so I drank, and it made me not think about the things in my life that I was going through. So I drank more, and then I drank some more, and then the actual disease of alcoholism grabbed me and said, "You're mine now." And I couldn't not drink. And I remember telling someone very close to me one time that I thought I was an alcoholic. And this person said, "Well, why do you think that?" I said, "Well, I drank a six-pack for breakfast this morning." And this person said, "I don't think you're an alcoholic. I think maybe you're depressed because of some of these life things, and you should go to the doctor and ask about maybe some antidepressants. But don't tell them you drank a six-pack for breakfast. They might want to send you to something called rehab." So that's what I did. I went to a doctor, and I didn't mention my drinking for breakfast, and I was put on antidepressants. I continued to drink, and those two things don't really work together. I never got happy. I'm taking my antidepressants, but I'm still drinking now. I'm drinking daily, and I was drinking in the morning by this time, and it with women, addiction progresses very rapidly. Now, I had been drinking off and on for many years, but the actual alcoholism and its full grip on me took place in about a 3-year span, from having to drink all the time until I finally got the help that I needed or that I wanted. I wanted the help. I realized that, oh, this isn't right. And I'm so grateful for the people that God had put in my path when that time came.
What has this relationship with drinking done to your relationship with your family? Can you give us some insight into how it has impacted relationships in your life that are most important to you?
Um, well, my kids, um, they grew up with a mom who was able to care for them physically, but not necessarily emotionally. It's hard to be emotionally available for anyone when you're um, under the influence. I mean, I couldn't even be emotionally available for myself, much less, my children never went to bed hungry. They were not dirty. They were not neglected. They were not abused. But I was not emotionally available. I was not equipped to handle their emotional needs. And I can do that now. And I've been doing it for 15 years, and it's pretty good. I have really, really close relationships with both my daughters. My son and I, we're still trying to navigate our way with each other. But, you know, that's because if somebody knows you one way, they know you like this is how you've always been, and then all of a sudden something happens and you're a whole different way, you have to get to know that person again. And so, although my son and I, who passed away last year, we're still navigating a few nuances of our relationship. We loved each other fully and completely. We even got to take a wonderful trip together. A few years ago and just had the best time. And we got to know each other differently. It's different. My girls were still small and still lived with me when I got sober. My son was already a grown up person out of the house. So the dynamic was a little different. I could be a little more hands on with these girls. And we had to navigate an adult relationship, Joshua and I did. So, but all in all, I would say that those are the most important, most valuable gifts that I've received from my recovery.
What about your relationship with your parents? They were instrumental
They
in your
were.
journey. Can you give our listeners some insight there on how they
Well,
helped you?
oh, they were wonderful. So I remember, having that last drunk, and that last drunk was a doozy, and I blacked out, and then I passed out, and I stayed passed out for quite some time. Um, I was actually at my mom's house when this happened, and I remember her walking through the bedroom, and she's like, "Beck, are you all right?" I said, "Mom, I need some help. I need to go to treatment. Can we call someone and see if we can do that?" And she did, and she and my dad sat down and made out a plan and got me into treatment. I went to Haven House over in Oxford, and like this was 15 years ago, and I was scared to death, but I did it, and I'm so grateful that I did. It was a wonderful experience. And then when I got out of treatment, the kids and I lived with them for a while. That's just really how it worked out. But they were like, okay, here's the deal. If you're going to live here, this is how things are going to work. And they gave me some guidelines, and they gave me some parameters, and they became very supportive of my recovery. I can remember coming in the evenings. Well, my dad always said, "Beck, if you need to go to a meeting, I'll watch these kids. Don't you worry about a thing." And that's what I would do. He'd watch the kids. I'd go off to my AA meeting, and I'd get back, and he'd say, "Did you have a good meeting?" And I'd say, "Yes, sir, I did." Or some days I'd say, "I don't know. I'm not sure I remember anything that I heard." You know, I can remember the first few weeks of going to AA meetings. I would take notes because, years of alcoholism doesn't just fix itself after 30 days of treatment. It doesn't fix itself. I mean, it doesn't ever fix itself. There are a lot of things that I do on a daily basis to keep my addiction at bay and to try to help me grow as a human so that I can be the best version of myself, not only for me, but for the people around me.
Tell me a little bit about the beginning of how Talbot House came into existence.
Okay.
The early stages, the beginning of the beginning.
That's a crazy one. Be careful when you make a statement to God. You never know it's a prayer sometimes until it gets, until it happens. I was working locally at Lifecore at their drug and alcohol treatment program here in Tupelo. And I was doing peer support with the women who were in treatment there. Every day, one of the ladies would walk up to me and say, Miss Becky, I don't have anywhere to go when I leave here. Or Miss Becky, I can't go back where I was because they're still doing the things I don't want to do anymore. Now, this was 2014 and 15, and sober living was not a new concept to the world, but it was a very new concept to Mississippi. So there just weren't a lot of options unless you were a man. So in Lee County alone, there were 7 different sober living options for men. So we had men leaving treatment all day, every day, and had all these options for sober living, safe, sober, supportive housing right in Lee County. The women had nothing. There was nothing here. We would try to find housing for them out of state, or sometimes you could find houses between Jackson and the coast, kind of scattered here and there. And it just, in some cases that would work. A single woman with no kids who's looking to make a fresh start, go live in sober living and rebuild your life in another town. That's great, and many women do that. Many men do that, and it's a thing, and it's perfectly fine. But I was working with a lot of women who were from North Mississippi, and they had children who might have been living with family members, or they might be in foster care, or any number of reasons. Now, if the children were in DHS custody, the women or the parents, because this applies to men as well, if you want to start that reunification process, DHS will give you a list of things you need to do. Go to treatment, find safe housing, get a job, regular visitations. I mean, there's a list. It's called a contract. And that regular visitation, that was a big one. If you live in North Mississippi, your children are in North Mississippi, the only place you can find for sober housing is Biloxi. How are you, as a newly sober woman who's probably broke, going to make it back to North Mississippi every 2 weeks or every random Thursday when the social worker calls you to have your visitation with your kids? It's just not a doable thing. I was sitting on the porch at work one day and I said, God, these ladies really need somewhere to go. And it started happening. It was not my intention in any way to open a sober living house. I'd done a little research on them. I'd been researching ones that were already in existence in the world. And I had a general idea that you would have to do this and that and the other to make that happen, but I did not feel like I was the person for the job. I didn't feel like that wasn't my job to do that. But it just started happening. I was contacted by a young woman I had met several years prior. She had called me on the phone one day, and she and I were chatting, and I asked her where she'd been living, and she says, "Oh, I live in a sober living house in Memphis." So I asked her about it. How many people live there? Do you pay rent or program fees? How do you get where you're going? When do you know what day to do your laundry? I had all these questions, and she answered my questions, and I took a few notes. And a couple of weeks later, she called back, and I had another list of questions for her. And she said, "Why are you always asking me about my house?" I said, "We don't have one here." I said, "I'm working with all these ladies, and there's not any sort of sober living housing for women in North Mississippi." I said, "Would you have been able to live here if we'd had that?" She said, "Yeah, absolutely I would have been." And she mentioned that she knew someone who had expressed an interest in doing something like that a few years prior. So she said, I'm going to have them call you. I said, okay, but I didn't think another thing of it. You know how when you're just chit-chatting with somebody and you just don't think anything of it, you just go on about your day. A few days later, a gentleman called me and said we had a mutual friend, and he wondered if we would like to meet. And I said, sure. Now, I was scared to death because still I'm thinking, I'm not the person for this. I'm not the person for this. I don't know. So I called my AA sponsor. I said, I'm not going to go. I'm going to call him and cancel. She said, why would you do that? I said, because I'm not the one. I don't know how to do this. She said, how many people came up to you at work over the past week and said, Miss Becky, I don't have anywhere to go? I said, a handful. She said, it's going to happen again tomorrow, and it'll happen again the next day. And she said, just go talk to this person. She said, it won't cost you anything. It won't hurt. Um, you know, just go talk. And so I said, okay, I will do that. I can do that. I was nervous as a cat, and I went and I sat down with this gentleman, and we visited for about 2 hours. And he said, and I still really didn't know. I mean, in my head, I'm thinking, okay, I don't know what this is about. I don't know why he wants me. I didn't know him. I didn't know why I was actually talking to him. I mean, I just told him that we needed it and we would need somewhere to live, and we would need plates and sheets and, you know, things like that. Look, I've restarted my household probably 4 times in my life from scratch. And I've done that a couple of times in recovery. I have a tendency to give everything I own to the ladies at Talbot who are moving into permanent housing. I will clean out everything I own. I mean, I looked up one day and didn't have any silverware. Um, but I know how to set up house. So I knew that part. And I thought maybe he had a church group that might be interested in helping donate items or, you know, something. And he looks at me at the end of this meeting. He says, you know what? I want to help you get this started. Why don't you spend the weekend and see if you can find a house, and I'll call you on Monday. So I started scouring the MLS listings for Tupelo, I mean, all weekend. And I found a house that I thought would, you know, like I still didn't have any parameters, you know. He just wants you to see if you can find a house. I mean, so I'm looking for a house that that didn't cost much money, I didn't think. You know, to me it cost a lot of money, but it was on the lower end of the scale. And I thought, well, maybe they will lease it to us. And then and it was in a part of the, you know, Tupelo that I thought would be relatively safe. You know, it was near a school. And, you know, there are some guidelines about being around schools. I thought, well, that would be good, you know. At least the drug dealers will be inside and not out on the street if they're, you know. I just, you know. So he had called me and said, did you find a house? And I told him what I'd found. And he says, you know what? I know a real estate agent. Let me have her call you. And I said, okay. I'm thinking it must have cost too much money, but I'm still not putting anything together. And within 2 hours, a nice lady called, and she said, I understand you're looking for 4 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. And she gave me, she said, and here's our limit. And she gave me the most outrageous amount of money I've ever heard in my life. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to be able to put these ladies in a good neighborhood. I'm going to be able to give them a nice home, you know. So we started looking. We started looking at houses, and I looked at one, and I still love the house, but it needed to be gutted. And I think somebody's done that since then. It's been, gosh, we've been open for 8 years. So I think, and it's on a great piece of property. And then we found one that was move-in ready. It was just right, and it sold while we were standing in the driveway. And then this wonderful gentleman that I've grown to admire and respect and love. He's become my mentor and my friend, and there's been a time or two he's been a surrogate parent. Calls me up one day and says, Becky, have you heard of the Gardner Simmons house? And I said, well, yeah, I've heard of that. Now, my brain, it's still downtown on the corner of Jefferson and Green. That's where my brain is. He gives me this crazy address, and I said, I don't know about that. And he said, well, let's, Sanctuary Hospice owns the property, and I think it's available, and maybe we can go look at it and see if we can, rent it from them. So he gave me the address, and the night before we were going to meet, I poked my girls in the car, and I said, well, let's go find out where it is so I don't end up late to this meeting. And we drove around until we found it, and we drove by, and we stopped in front of the Gardner Simmons home, and I went, oh, this can't be right. And my girls were like, Mama, that's not a house. That's a mansion. So I said, this can't be right, but I'll show up here tomorrow. It was right. It was right. That house is the perfect house to be Talbot House. It is put together perfectly. It has a whole wing with 5 bedrooms and 5 bedroom bathroom suites on it. And I'm walking through, and I'm like, we could put 2 ladies in each room. I'll be able to help 10 women at one time. And there was enough room for them to have their groceries, and there was enough room for everybody to sit down and have a meal together if they wanted to, and beautiful outdoor areas, and a private space for our live-in, overnight accountability partner, or it was just perfect. It was just perfect. So this sweet man and I negotiated a lease with Gardner Simmons. We took in our first resident October 2nd of 2015. We needed to pass one more inspection with the city, and I made her wait in her car with her family until we did that. I just didn't want to jinx anything. And since then, Heather, who is our residential director, I ask her all the time, Heather, how many ladies have we served? Every time we get a new one in, Heather, how many are we up to? And I think we're right at 250, and it may be more. In 8 years, we've seen 250 new faces, and
Wow.
I mean, it's just been wonderful. Now, I don't remember every one of them, but I remember most of them, and that's important.
That's amazing. So the Talbot House has tremendously grown as far as an organization. You're serving all of these women
Yes.
in our community in such this amazing capacity. And now you have bakery and the cafe.
Yes.
And tell us a little bit about the initiatives of the cafe and what your future goals and aspirations are for these initiatives to support the organization and the mission.
Okay. Well, the reason we have the bakery and cafe program is to provide job readiness and employment to some of the women who come through our program. So many of the women who come to us, it takes a long time to recover. It takes a long time to get your feet back under you. And in many cases, the ladies haven't worked in a long time. There have been a few cases where they've never had a job. There's just so many instances, but we want everybody to find a purpose. We even put it on the wall. That's how important it is. We want everybody to find their recovery. We want them to find a community of people, and we want them to find some purpose. And being able to earn a paycheck is a really big thing. So that's the main reason we did this. The goal was to be able to make so much money that we could, help support Talbot as a whole. That hadn't happened yet. I know how much money we need to make each day for that to happen, and we're not there yet. But we have been able to pay our employees, and we have been able to pay our bills. And I mean, that's a lot. That's especially these days. And there's no extra, but we are covering the necessities. And I think sometimes the universe is like, you're not ready for extra yet. That's the way I look at it some days. And so spinning off on the bakery and cafe, I mean, these ladies make every single thing in here from scratch. I mean, from scratch. They bake the bread. They bake the cookies. They do everything. They come up with new recipes. The only thing, I'm going to tell you, the only thing that we buy from the food service that we don't make from scratch is the potato salad, because it's so good. It's the same kind they use at Pepper's. It's just really good. So, no, we don't make potato salad, but everything else, they get back there and they cook and they make it. Our soups are homemade. We don't use soup bases from the food service. We make our soups. It's just, and it's wonderful. And they learn so much. We've got a lady here now. She's been with us for a little while, and she is a bright spot in this bakery. Came into Talbot as a resident and did everything she could to find a job so she wouldn't have to come work at the bakery. Now, nobody has to come work at the bakery, but, she was thinking, if I can't find a job, and we told her, if you can't find anything, you're welcome to come work at the bakery. But she tried everything in her power to keep from having to do that because, I don't want to do that. But she got in here, she could barely boil water, and she sure couldn't fry an egg. She makes all of our soups. She makes all of our cream cheese frosting. She does the cinnamon butter for our cinnamon rolls. She handles our sandwich station during lunch every day. She's a key holder. She manages money and the cash register. She does all of the things, and I couldn't be more proud. Not only that, she comes in every day with a smile on her face, and she is so good to the customers. I mean, she's wonderful. And I'm grateful that she is someone that I've gotten to know through this whole thing. So that's how, those are the things you get to see. You get and you get to see these changes take place. So running the bakery and cafe, we were approached by a couple of different businesses who wanted to purchase our products to sell either out of their own restaurant type situation or grocery store or food service program. And we got the certifications we needed through the state to be able to wholesale products. We did that. We did the whole thing, and we did it for here. And the ladies not only were doing all the things that they do for here, for our retail, they were also adding in all of the wholesale things. I mean, that's a tiny little kitchen back there, and there would be 8 ladies back there some days just going wide open trying to get everything done. And we realized that we needed a little more room for the wholesale. So in January of this year, we opened our wholesale production kitchen. It's the Talbot House Production Kitchen. I mean, we're real original with our name. So it's Talbot House Sober Living for Women, Talbot House Bakery and Cafe, Talbot House Production Kitchen. So we opened that in January of this year. So all of those things that we wholesale to other businesses or, anything that's going to be resold, we've got a whole other group of ladies that we're able to provide employment and job readiness to over there. I mean, it's phenomenal. Everybody who works for Talbot, with the exception of one person, we have all, I did well too. I didn't go through Talbot as a resident, but 2 of us have been through Talbot House as a resident there after treatment. And I'm trying to think, I think there are 5 ladies who are here at the bakery every day, and I think there are 5 ladies right now who work at the production kitchen every day. So we're able to do that. And we expanded housing this year too and opened a second house to provide more of a transitional program to women who have met certain criteria over at the main house, minimum 6-month stay. They're actively working a recovery program, and they're active in that program. They have their own transportation needs met. It gives them an opportunity to transition over to a smaller house with their own bedroom and a much bigger bed. That's the big thing. Everybody that comes into town, oh, wait a minute, we want to do whatever we have to do to qualify for Lawndale so we can get the private room with the bigger bed. And we can house 4 women over there. 3 of those ladies have moved into permanent housing, and we're just adding more in, as they meet those parameters. It's been a really exciting thing.
It's been so much fun watching the organization grow. I remember when you came by the offices with your stupid good cinnamon
Mm-hmm.
rolls, and
Mm-hmm.
how that evolved into the bakery now. And you have been so entrepreneurial in your approach to figuring it out, and you have been so open, and really the drive behind the amazing organization that we have now. And I know it takes a lot of people and supporters. Did you ever in a million years think you would be here today sitting and you know, sharing your story of how it came to be and what's happening now and all of the opportunities that are coming your way? And it's just continuously growing and getting bigger and bigger. And
Not in a million years. It's still mind-boggling to me because, when this all kind of came up and I realized that it was going to happen, initially. I remember thinking in my head, if I could just find 4 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms, I could help 6 to 8 ladies if the bedrooms are big enough. Surely I could do that. But I don't know. My brain doesn't have the ability to really see a big picture a lot of times, and I think that saves me. I think a lot of times I'm just like, okay, let's meet this immediate need, and if it works, we'll do it again. If it doesn't work, we'll make adjustments or just not do it again. And that's how I've tried to approach everything. It's not scientific. I've had to step out in faith more times then I can count on all my fingers and toes and all of your fingers and toes and probably several other people's fingers and toes. I don't really have okay, we're going to do this, this, and this is how we're going to do this, this, and this, and these are going to be the results from these things. I don't see that. I'm just like, okay, these ladies need somewhere to live. How can I maybe help facilitate that? And then that's where my God steps in and says, girl, just sit back. Just sit back. I've got some ideas, and I mean, even with the bakery, it could have been a straight up flop. It could have been. And, uh, you know, we are doing everything we can to keep this place going. We absolutely are. So we can keep providing opportunities for women who are trying to get back on their feet because they get to be mamas. I got to be a mama to my kids again. I hope somebody else gets that opportunity. They'll get to be mamas. They'll get to be productive members of society. They'll get to feel comfortable in their skin without the use of chemicals. I mean, we have this saying in the room sometimes that, when you start seeing somebody with that light starts coming on their eyes, we'll say, oh, your hair's getting sober because your hair even looks better. It's just so, and to be able to give somebody that opportunity. The other saying in the rooms is, you got to give it away to keep it. And so I feel like if I want to keep what I have, I need to give away as much as I can. That's important. My story is not going to match up with probably any of the women who have come through Talbot House in probably the last 5 years. I mean, it's different. They're like, oh, she's an old white lady alcoholic, when we were out here shooting heroin, and it doesn't, but the way it made us feel, what our addictions made us feel, we can all relate on that. And if I can share that part with them and be able to find some common ground, I think that's good. They always know that I'm an ally.
What would you tell to a woman or anyone listening to this episode who is either maybe starting to acknowledge that she has a problem or has somebody in her life that has a problem? What advice would you share with them?
Well, if there are any women listening to this and you think you might have a problem, call me because I have all the resources you could need. If there's someone in your life you are concerned or worried about, reach out to a professional to find the best way to navigate that. If that professional is your own personal doctor, to find the resources. Common misconception, I can't save you and you can't save me. I can't love you out of your addiction. And I wish we could. You know, there's so many people that have come through and I've loved them so, so much. And there have been times when I've worked harder on their recovery than they've worked on their own recovery. And, you know, I'll catch it, or Heather and I both do that from time to time. We'll work harder on somebody else's life than they do on their own, and we'll have to keep each other in check, you know. We can't do that for another person, but we can reach out to someone who, maybe someone like me, who can put them in touch with the resources, who can guide them through that process. Because, you know, there are no right answers and there are no wrong answers. You know, dealing with a cousin or an other family relative is going to be different than dealing with a child. It's a lot different. Or a coworker, it's going to be a lot different. So I absolutely recommend professional guidance, and knowing that my phone is never turned off. It's never turned off. It did something weird a few days ago, so I turned it off, but I turned it right back on. You know, my ringer might be off, but for the past 8 years, my phone had been turned off, but maybe 20 minutes in the past 8 years. I am available if anybody calls me I've taken calls in the middle of the night. I've taken calls from people who are clearly under the influence of one thing or another and won't even remember that they called me the next day. There have been times when I've gotten in my car and gone to pick somebody up because they called and screamed, "Help, Miss Becky," you know, and taken them to the house, or taking them, you know, to treatment, wherever they need to go. Because I know we can recover. I know it's possible. I mean, recovery is there for the taking. It's a gift, you know. All we have to do is accept it.
If you could give your younger self a piece of advice, what would you tell yourself?
You know, I don't think I would tell myself anything. I really don't. I don't think I would. I think that everything has happened in my life the exact way that my God wanted it to. You know, I hear a lot of people, I would tell her to be braver. I would tell her to be, you know, I don't know. I wouldn't even tell myself not to take that first drink. I would not even do that. I think everything has happened in my life the exact way that my God wanted it to. And I'm grateful for all of it. I'm grateful.
The good and the bad.
The good and the bad. I'm grateful for all of it.
It's your journey. So many people don't realize that sometimes those experiences, those decisions are actually what makes us who we are.
Yeah, I mean, you don't know how good things can be until you have a little rain, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Becky, it has truly been an honor and a privilege to have you with me here today. Thank you so much for sharing your story and inspiring our ladies to be more aware, be educated. Hopefully your story will be able to help many more individuals, men and women. And so I truly thank you for being here with me today.
Well,
and
thank you for
sharing
asking
that.
me.
So
Okay.
thank you.
You're welcome.